Welcome everyone to week 2 of our Lent homily series called Redirecting Our Hearts. In this video, we'll take a look at the impact worship can have on us. You've probably heard of the term focal point, as in the focal point of a room. It's what immediately grabs your attention in that space, and it clearly is the part of the room that everything else complements. The focal point determines the look and feel of the rest of the room. Well, we can say that part of what happens in worship is that we make God the focal point of our lives. God is the why behind everything else that we do. We praise Him, adore Him, honor Him, give Him the credit and the glory. And I argue that the effect is that in doing so, we're recalibrating our minds and hearts to make God the focal point of our existence. Think of the first part of the Great Commandment, to love God with all our mind, heart, and soul. How can loving God with all our hearts do anything but reorganize and recalibrate all of our living in both big things and small things? Another way to look at the impact of worship on us is that it's like adjusting the compass of our lives to point true north, so that every step we take, no matter what we're doing, thinking, saying, no matter where we are, is a step in the direction of God. That's the all in the all our mind, heart, and soul part of the Great Commandment. If worship involves making God the focal point of our lives, that means we're removing ourselves from that central position. And the interesting thing is that in emptying ourselves in that way, we actually find fullness, because life isn't really about me. So worship, while we redirect our hearts towards God, also does us good. It's where that old saying, "in giving we receive," holds true. And the church teaches that the sole purpose of all liturgies of the church, that's our forms of public worship, and all her sacraments, is that we might have life and have it abundantly. In redirecting our hearts to God in worship and the sacraments, we're accessing full, meaningful life. We express our love for God in worship, and in the process, we find full life. And I think that's partly because our lives are put in their proper perspective. Now, the greatest moment of being filled up in worship is when we're filled with Christ Himself in the Eucharist. After all, Christ said He is the life. Just think about the gospel reading from this past weekend. It's a great example of being filled up by a special and intense experience of Jesus. It's called the Transfiguration. Jesus goes up a mountain with 3 of His disciples, and these 3 disciples experience Jesus in His divine glory. I think we can say that they get a special glimpse of His identity. And they experience this right after hearing about how Jesus has to suffer and about how following Him can be difficult. So I think one way we can look at this is the disciples' experience of Jesus in the Transfiguration is an encouragement to them, to fill them up, to face those trials. Now for us, every weekend at Mass, as we empty ourselves and place God at the center through worship, we're also filled up with Jesus, brought face to face with Him. I think we could say that it fills us up to face our challenges of the week and, just as important, to fulfill our mission as His followers during the week. So think about what in your mind and heart needs some recalibrating, so to speak. What's keeping your compass from pointing true north towards God? Commit to taking real, concrete steps this week to evaluate where God stands in your life and priorities. Remember, if you want to really feel whole, to be filled up and live well, put God at the center as the focal point and worship Him. Be honest about what's holding you back and what you might need to wrestle with to grow in this area of following Jesus. Let God fill you up to face not only the challenges of life, but to do our common mission of inviting and forming more people to become followers of Jesus. Now that is really making God the focal point. Well, thank you for continuing this Lenten journey with us. Help others make the most of their Lent through these videos by liking them, sharing them with people you know, and by subscribing. I hope that Lent continues to be a building experience of redirecting your heart to God. And I look forward to our reflection together next week.